Chris Lee and Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14 here to preview the college football playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl. You can catch that on New Year's Day for Central on ESPN. The odds makers have Michigan as a 1.5 favorite. The computers love Michigan even more. You've got Jeff Sagarin has got Michigan by 3, as does FPI. Team Rankings has Michigan favored by 6. SP Plus, Michigan by 8. The computers really love themselves some Big Ten this year. So it's kind of interesting to see the discrepancies between the computers and the odds makers on this one, Blayne.
A lot of that probably has to do with power rankings and how you win football games and things of that nature. And Michigan ran roughshod through the Big Ten, which was not very good in terms of offenses. So any kind of offense and any kind of points that Michigan's special teams and defense turned into points, that kind of was a big separator there and probably helps them out in those computer rankings. But I'm excited to see this one. It is going to be an old-fashioned slugfest between these two teams that believe in winning at the line of scrimmage, two coaches that are two of the more recognizable and talked about coaches in all of college football. So I'm excited to break down this matchup, Chris.
Yeah, one in particular is getting talked about a lot as we do this, but we won't get into that. In any case, our preview is presented by our friends at BetOnline. All the major sports are in action this week with the college football playoff ready to kick off. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, and NHL games this season. Head to the website today, get into the action, see all the updated odds this week. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV. Get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's start with breaking this game down when Alabama's got the ball. The Crimson Tide averaging 35.1 points a game. Michigan giving up just 9.5 points a game. I don't know if the Big Ten this year was – the offenses were bad or the defense were just that good. I'm not going to get in an argument over it, but the numbers were very interesting this year, and Michigan's numbers were incredible. Per offensive snap, Alabama averaged 6.4 yards per. That ticked up late in the season. Michigan gave up just 4.3 yards per snap. Alabama runs it 58% of the time. It gets 5.4 yards per rushing play. Michigan giving up 3.8. That adjusts for sacks and counts those as passing plays. Michigan's pass defense, one of the most elite in the country, 4.7 yards per passing play. Alabama averaged 7.6. Now, you look at the yards per pass attempt. When Jalen Milroe got them off, he was averaging over 10 yards a completion, but the issue was they got sacked a lot. And so that comes off the pass play numbers. Now, Alabama was able to protect Milroe much better as the year went on. But this is an Alabama offense that got better against a Michigan defense that was elite from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a Michigan defense that just absolutely dominated for the most part. Didn't have much of a challenge from anyone, even Ohio State. You never felt like that Ohio State game was really in doubt. You always felt like Michigan was the better team, the more talented team at this point, and quite frankly, the better coach team. I think the job that the Michigan staff did while Jim Harbaugh was suspended and things like that, all the jokes aside about signs and stealing and all that kind of stuff, once that was over with, they still won all the games in front of them and went out there and held teams to abysmally low totals rushing against them, things of that nature. So I think that's going to be the key there, is how does this Alabama offensive line get movement against the Michigan defensive front? But again, one thing that Michigan has not seen, they have not seen a player as dynamic as Jalen Milroe. He can absolutely take over a football game with his legs. He did it against Georgia. Made plays with his arm when he needed to, some key fourth down conversions, and also on that last drive when they needed him to, and they needed to get a couple of first downs. What did they do? They had some design quarterback runs in their back pocket. And here's one thing you've got to look at. Okay, these two staffs going against one another with a month to prepare for a game, I guarantee you that Tommy Rees and also Nick Saban, people think of Nick Saban as, oh, he's a defensive guy. Well, also a absolute sponge when it comes to football, and the guys that he's around. He's learned from Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian, and he being a defensive mind and being under Bill Belichick and all that kind of stuff, everything in his background. He knows a good bit about offensive football too. And you give those two a month to prepare, I just think you're going to see an Alabama team that's going to be hard to handle. But you've got a Michigan team, like I said, that is absolutely been basically impenetrable this year when it comes to defense. So I'm excited to see these two match up. When it comes down to it, you got Mike Sandstrill, who has 5 picks on the year. One thing that we did see early in the year against Texas for Jalen Milroe, Chris, was that when they disguised the coverage on him and when there was a little bit of pressure, he forced the ball and had a couple key turnovers against Texas. Sandstrill, who is a really, really opportunistic player on the back end, force some turnovers over there. And then also, they've got Jalvin Harrell and they've got Josiah Stewart, guys who can get after the quarterback. How will they go about doing their rushing of Jalen Milroe? You have to be disciplined in how you do it to not allow him out of the pocket. So I'm excited to see that part, but I think you're going to see Jason McClellan being back for Alabama being a big difference because they want to have balance. So the legs of McClellan and Milroe are what I'm watching in this one, Chris.
On the other side of the matchup, Michigan, averaging 36.7 points a game. Alabama giving up 18.4 per snap. Michigan 6.1 yards per play. Alabama giving up 4.9. Michigan runs at 59% of the time, 4.7 yards per rushing play, which is exactly what Alabama gives up. Per passing play, 8.1, and Alabama giving up just 5.2 per passing play, which is elite. Alabama's secondary can take it away. Bama forced turnovers on 2.2% of snaps, whereas Michigan turned it over just 0.9% of the time, which is elite. The interesting thing to me, I was reading a lot about this in The Athletic this week and listening to coaches speak anonymously. J.J. McCarthy, to me, a little bit of an enigma coming into this game because the numbers were great. 74% completions, 9.2 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. Michigan just didn't need to throw the ball a lot because it was just dominating teams defensively and controlling it through the running game. But a lot of questions, Blayne. Was Michigan not throwing it because McCarthy just wasn't trustworthy enough, or did they just not need it? And that's, I think, one of the bigger questions coming into this game, because this is an Alabama secondary that is loaded with elite defensive backs who we're going to see in the league. And, oh, by the way, a couple guys like Dallas Turner and company that can get after you too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a combination of the two. I think you saw that McCarthy had his struggles, like in that Maryland game, only completing 52% of his passes and not throwing a touchdown in that game. And then the Penn State game, basically they virtually didn't throw it at all. They ran the ball 32 straight times to end the game against Penn State, which is unheard of. And I think that was them a little bit, showing their dominance and showing how they can run the football and leaning into their identity. But one thing I think that JJ McCarthy is going to have to do is he is a very athletic guy. He's more athletic than people give him a credit for, Chris, in terms of his legs and his escapability and things like that. And when Alabama has been hurt defensively, it's not been by a guy doing it in the pocket. It has been by someone who has been able to run the football against them. We saw Auburn be able to run the football against them. We saw LSU be able to run the football against them for over 200 yards. We saw USF early in the year with a mobile quarterback be able to run the football for almost 200 yards against them. I think in order to have success against Alabama, you got to have some mobility from the quarterback position. I think they're going to have some designed runs, some bootleg stuff, get JJ McCarthy out on the move, because if you try to leave him in the pocket, I think Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell are going to get back there. Michigan was 80s, I think in the mid 80s in the country when it came to sacks allowed against Power 5 teams. They allowed 17 sacks against Power 5 teams this year. Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell are going to get after him. I think they're going to have to move the pocket. I think they're going to have to design quarterback run, some zone read stuff, some RPO game mixed in there to try to keep them off balance. Because if they just try to line up and run the ball with Blake Corum right down Alabama's throat, it's not going to happen. They faced a Georgia team in the SEC championship game that had one of the better offensive lines in the country, and Georgia had 78 rushing yards in that game. So I think it's going to take JJ McCarthy being on the move, some design run stuff. I don't know how comfortable Michigan will be doing that. And I don't think when you're talking about Michigan, the thing about Alabama is they're so good on the back end with Kool-Aid McKinstry, with Terrion Arnold, with Caleb Downs, who can match up with Cortland at tight end. I just don't know where I see a matchup, or Colston Loveland at tight end, excuse me. When they have Colston Loveland, who was their second leading receiver, he was really a playmaker for them. They've got Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson, that trio at wide receiver. They're good. They're good players on the outside, but I don't know if they're dynamic enough to really threaten Alabama. And I think Alabama can play 6 men in the box against Michigan and get away with it and not have to do much too high stuff. So, I think that Michigan's going to have to try to take advantage of that with an extra hat in the box.
Blayne, I'm torn on my pick. Because on one hand, Alabama has been playing elimination games every week. Played 11 of them since that loss to Texas. I don't think it's vintage Nick Saban Alabama. I don't know that it's possible to have that kind of team in this day and age of the portal, but I respect so much what he's done. He is the greatest college coach of our lifetimes in any sport, and you bet against Nick Saban, and you're usually doing that at your own peril. I think Michigan's got a bunch of distractions with Jim Harbaugh for all the things we can get into. More stuff came out this week. But a couple things really stick out to me here. The 9.5 points allowed per game. I get that the Big Ten was not the SEC when it came to offense. I don't care what league you're in. If you're in the Sun Belt or Conference USA, that's impressive. And two more things stand out to me. Michigan was penalized 26 yards a game this year. That's incredible. I don't know that I've ever heard of a team that did anything like that. And the turnover rate, less than 1% of the snaps did Michigan turn it over, 0.9%. I tend to lean heavily on stats, and sometimes that's to my detriment, but I'm just looking at these things, and maybe I'm doing it to be contrarian, but I'm going to go with Michigan in this one. I do think it's going to be very close.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Alabama has Alabama, it's the Rose Bowl he's trying to win in the fight song. I think that's evidence enough there for me, Chris. But no, seriously, when you're talking about Alabama, I think that clutch gene, that playoff mode muscle that they've developed over the year, because it's like you have to exercise that, right? There you have to be tested a little bit at different points in times. And I think, yes, Michigan had that Ohio State game, but it was at home, and they were able to take care of business in that one against the Ohio State team that I don't think was quite good, honestly, that very good. And I think that Alabama is going to be as healthy as they've been in a long time. Like I said, getting Jace McClellan back, getting some guys back up front on defense. I think Alabama wins, and I think they win it convincingly. I don't think that Michigan has the athletes to handle Jalen Milroe. I think that it's going to be hard for Michigan to run the football, and J.J. McCarthy is going to be put in positions where he has to stand back there and throw it. And I think Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell are going to get to him, and guys like Caleb Downs, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold are going to get a couple picks in this game. So give me Alabama to win by double digits.
All right, that's interesting. We went against each other on both semifinal games. And look, the playoffs, for all that I hate about college football, the one thing that I like is it has brought some parity. These semifinal games and these championships, we have made fun of them for being blowouts. I don't think we're going to get that this year. I hope we're not. Either way, whatever the outcome is, can't wait to see them. We'll recap them when they're done. Best way to get that, hit that subscribe button and hit the like button. That helps our channel. For Blayne Gilmer, I'm Chris Lee. This has been the College Football semifinal playoff game known as the Rose Bowl, presented to you by our friends at BetOnline.